Hey everyone, welcome to another thrilling episode of LustDiary, where we dive deep into the secret corners of our desires, exploring the stories we dare not share with anyone. Today's story is about lust, power, and a hidden fetish that turned an ordinary marriage into something entirely unpredictable. Buckle up, because this one's going to be a wild ride. It all started innocently enough. My husband and I had been married for 8 years, comfortable, settled into our routines, and on the surface, everything seemed perfectly fine. But underneath that polished exterior, something was missing. The spark we once had was fading, and we both knew it. One night, after a few too many glasses of wine, my husband confessed something that took me by surprise. "I have this fantasy," he said, his voice hesitant but full of longing. I raised an eyebrow, intrigued. What kind of fantasy? He shifted uncomfortably on the couch. "I want to see you. Touch yourself. I want to watch." At first, I was taken aback. It wasn't something I had ever considered, and yet, the idea intrigued me in ways I couldn't fully explain. The vulnerability of exposing myself to him like that, while he just sat back and watched, it stirred something deep inside me. I didn't know if it was excitement or fear, but I nodded, agreeing to his request. The next evening, as we both prepared for bed, I felt the tension building in the air. He hadn't mentioned his confession from the previous night, but I knew it was on his mind. It was on mine too. After turning off the lights, I slipped under the covers, feeling the weight of his gaze on me. The anticipation was thick between us, and I could feel my heart racing. "Are you sure?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. He didn't say anything, just nodded, his eyes never leaving mine. I hesitated for a moment before sliding my hand under the sheets, slowly tracing the curve of my body. At first, I felt awkward and exposed, but as I continued, I noticed the effect it had on him. His breathing grew heavier, his eyes dark with desire, and something about his intense focus on me made me feel powerful. I moved my hand lower, my breath hitching as I began to lose myself in the sensation. He didn't touch me, he just watched, his eyes never leaving my body. And in that moment, the act became more than just a physical release. It was a connection, a silent agreement between us that this was something new, something thrilling, something that could bring us closer in ways we had never imagined. What started as an occasional thing soon became a regular part of our nights. Each time felt different, more intense, more charged with emotion. It wasn't just about the physical act anymore. It was about control, about trust, about the unspoken power dynamics between us. My husband's desire to watch me grew stronger with each passing night. He'd sit back in the armchair by the bed, his eyes glued to my every movement. Sometimes, he'd whisper instructions, telling me what to do, how to move, and I'd obey, feeling a strange mix of submission and dominance as I pleased him with nothing more than my own touch. It wasn't long before I found myself looking forward to these moments. The way his gaze made me feel, desired, worshipped, powerful, was intoxicating. I'd catch myself thinking about it during the day, imagining his eyes on me, the way his body would react as I teased and toyed with him without ever letting him touch me. But with each passing night, the lines began to blur. What started as an innocent fantasy had grown into something darker, something more complex. It wasn't long before my husband wanted more. It wasn't enough for him to simply watch me anymore. He began to ask for something else. "I want you to tie yourself up," he said one night, his voice thick with lust. I blinked, caught off guard. "Tie myself up?" He nodded. "Just your hands. I want to see you touch yourself, but I want to know you can't stop until I tell you to." The request sent a shiver down my spine. I had never thought about being bound before, but the idea of giving him that level of control over me was undeniably thrilling, and so I agreed. The first time was awkward. I wasn't used to the feeling of being restrained, and yet, as I lay there, my hands tied loosely to the headboard, I felt a surge of excitement. My husband sat in his usual chair, his eyes dark with desire, as he watched me struggle to please myself. unable to stop even if I wanted to. The experience was unlike anything I had ever imagined. The sense of helplessness, the intensity of the sensations, it was overwhelming. And yet, I wanted more. The more he watched, the more I craved his approval, his desire, his control. As the nights went on, our sessions became more elaborate, more intense. My husband began bringing in other elements, blindfolds, toys, anything that would heighten the experience. It was a game we played, a twisted dance of power and submission, and I found myself addicted to the thrill. But with every new layer of the game, I began to wonder, where did it end? Was this just a phase, a fantasy we were living out together? Or was it something more? Something that would change our relationship forever. One night, as I lay there, blindfolded and tied to the bed, I realized something that shook me to my core. This wasn't just about lust anymore. It was about control, about power, about the unspoken rules of our marriage that had been rewritten without me even realizing it. The final straw came one evening when my husband suggested something that crossed a line I hadn't even known existed. "I want someone else to watch," he said, his voice calm, as though he were asking me to pass the salt at dinner. I froze. What? He met my gaze, his eyes filled with an intensity that frightened me. "I want to invite someone else. To watch you, with me." I stared at him, my heart pounding in my chest. This had gone too far. The thrill of being watched had turned into something darker, something I no longer recognized. The control I had once felt over him had slipped away, and now, I was the one being controlled. In that moment, I realized I had a choice to make. I could continue down this path, losing myself in the twisted games we had created, or I could walk away, reclaiming the power I had once held in my own hands. And so, I made my decision. Lust can be intoxicating. It can blur the lines between pleasure and pain, control and submission. But in the end, we all have to decide where to draw the line before we lose ourselves completely. Thanks for watching this steamy episode of LustDiary. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more sultry tales of desire, betrayal, and the hidden fantasies that shape our lives. See you next time.